But for those who do not know the Competition Authority of Kenya, we are a body under the National Treasury to regulate competition and consumer protection. I know some people would confuse and say, what are we competing against? But when you talk about competition, is that we regulate mergers and acquisitions. So any company that's acquiring or wants to merge with another company in the Kenyan economy has to come to the authority for approval, because we assess the competition, because if a company becomes too large, then they're going to set up policies and systems that are going to prevent other companies, smaller companies, for example, from coming in. Then we also investigate restrictive trade practices, issues of price fixing, issues of allocation of markets. Some of our decisions in the recent past, we penalized steel companies over 400 million Kenyan shillings. There was some supermarket, we penalized some amounts. And in terms of consumer protection, we have investigated quite a number of complaints. We received complaints and we have investigated in the pharmaceutical sector. But the slide you can see in front of you just talks about the connection between competition and consumer protection policy. In terms of competition is how businesses compete with one another. And if they compete, then consumers like you, and I will be speaking to you as consumers, is that when businesses compete, then you are able to have choice of goods, of prices of goods. So when you go into the market, you can be able to choose what price you'd want, the quality that you'd want. So in consumer protection policy is all about enhancing the rights of the consumers. And remember, you're consumers. So when you have rights, then you exert pressure on the businesses to take care of your rights. And in this case, I know you are not just pharmacists, but also consumers. And when I talk about rights, then we can go into the next slides. What we mean is that under Article 46 of the Constitution of Kenya, 2010, on consumer rights, those are the rights. You have a right to goods and services of reasonable quality, a right to information necessary for you to gain benefit from goods and services, a right to the protection of your health, safety, and economic interests. You have a right to compensation from injury. So you can imagine when I talk about those rights, you already know as a pharmacist what you need to do to ensure consumers have the information. And a lot of this has been highlighted by Bina and also by Newton. So there's a lot that they talked about consumer protection in terms of regulation and regulatory, meeting the regulations. And also, Dr. Sorry, what's your first name, Dr. Nazra? Yeah, you talked a bit on, regulatory space and also touched a bit on consumer protection. So this is what you need to look at when you're thinking about consumers. If you could go to the next slide. Now, there's a Competition Act, number 12 of 2010. There are a lot of provisions touching on competition, but these specifically look at consumer welfare. Part 6 of the Act is on consumer welfare. And when we undertake our investigations, those are the provisions we rely on. False or misleading representations, unconscionable conduct, and we investigate issues of product information standards and issues of product safety. So you can imagine the pharmaceutical sector, and I'll give an example of surveillance that we did in the pharmaceutical sector and where we did some investigations. So those are the provisions that we look at. But when we went to do a market screening of the pharmaceutical sector about 8 months ago, if we could go to the next slide, is that those are some of the issues that we were able to find out. When we do a market surveillance, what we do is that we deploy officers across the country to go to the specific pharmacies where consumers would go and purchase these products. We will not identify ourselves. We do that covertly. And they purchase the drugs over the counter. And there was a lot of counterfeit and substandard medicine that was able to be discovered. And this has come out really in Newton's presentation and also Dr. Bina. And the issue that has been highlighted is on the parallel importation. But again, another thing we saw is misinformation and misleading advertising. And this is also perpetuated by the ones who are in the white coat behind that, selling the drugs to the consumers. So what are you doing to be able to ensure that you're protecting the consumers? Then there are issues of lack of transparency on the side effects and risks. This has come out even from the lady who asked the question to the regulator, the PPB. So those are issues that are out there that we really need to think about. And unethical marketing practices, which are there to the detriment of consumers. So those are some of the things we've been seeing. Inadequate information on usage and dosage. Now, when we went out into the market, we bought quite a lot of drugs and we've been reviewing them vis-a-vis the regulations in place in the country. And I'll give you one aspect, which was also highlighted by Dr. Bina, is on labeling. You find most of the drugs are not labeled in English. So how would you expect a consumer to be able to understand what is not labeled in English? Because it's in a foreign language, and I think those are the parallel imports. I was quite impressed by Dr. Bina's, when we had a conversation and she indicated that their medicine that they manufacture, that they even write, their labeling or writings is in Swahili, to reach out to those who need that medicine. So this is something that we need to be thinking about. Now, if we go to the next slide, is on how the authority addresses these issues. One of them is market surveillance. We go out into the market. You are also consumers. So if you want to lodge a complaint on anything that you see in the market, you can lodge a complaint with the authority. We also undertake public awareness and education. I know we've not reached out to the whole country per se, so we have a lot of work to do. However, this is one of the areas we empower consumers. And also policy advocacy, where we come in to look at some of the regulations and their gaps, because we have an advisory role to the government, and that's why we come in to give advisory to the government. And there are various remedies and enforcement action for violation. We impose penalties, and we can take matters through criminal proceedings at the Office of the Director of the Public Prosecutions. And also we do public awareness and a lot of warnings. We monitor some of the recalls that have been done in other countries and task the relevant the relevant manufacturers in the country to ensure that they have recalled the same products. So how we do that is that they give us a list of everybody who has purchased some of those products. I'll give you an example. Recently, I don't know whether it's a health-related product, but there was a recall of what do you call it? It's called breast milking, the pump for I think you know what I'm talking about. I'm forgetting the name, yeah? So it was recalled in a certain country, and we knew the manufacturer and ordered for recall. So they gave us a whole list of those who had purchased that product. And they went out and we made sure that they had recalled all the products. So if you could go to the next slide. What can we do to address consumer protection issues in the pharmaceutical sector? Collaboration, I would like to emphasize on collaboration. Strengthening regulatory enforcement, that has been mentioned severally that we need to really think about. We need to promote consumer awareness, jointly educate consumers. We need to come together. So government cannot just work by itself, but we need to come together with industry to be able to do that, increasing transparency and accountability, and also enhancing monitoring and reporting mechanisms. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kamiti. Any questions for the Competition Authority of Kenya?
My question is, for instance, if you come across like a pharmaceutical product and you've identified a deficiency, maybe in terms of labeling or something, so do you involve the regulator or it just becomes between you and the industry?
We also involve the regulator. The mystery shopping that I have alluded to, we have prepared some sort of detailed report, and we want to involve the regulator in this case. Our law allows for us to forward certain matters to specialized government agencies, and in this case, we are going to do that to PPB. There are other matters we don't have to forward to other relevant regulators, like, for example, some issues in the financial services sector we have, or insurance sector, we have gone ahead to investigate, but informed the sector regulator of an ongoing investigation into 1, 2, 3, 4. So we sign MOUs with quite a number of them, which allows us to undertake such investigations, but involve them. I would also want to point out that we are mandated to work with the Kenya Bureau of Standards, so we really work closely with the Kenya Bureau of Standards in our investigations, because some of it you'll see this concurrent jurisdiction. So then we come in, we have to collaborate with the other sector regulators to investigate these matters. Yeah.
So once you have involved the relevant regulator, like for example, if for us it's a recall, for instance, so it's a recall. So you've informed PPB, we are aware. So do you still work with us the entire journey, or once you have handed it over to the relevant regulator, then you don't get involved?
Once we hand over, we don't get involved. But another thing that we do is we come in to conduct training or awareness to your staff or the issues that we discovered, so that you have an awareness of what is going on out there.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
Anthony is my name. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I would just like to get your opinion about something in the pharmaceutical industry. So there's something that happens a lot, that especially among the multinationals. So one product, let's say a given product is in the Kenyan market, there are a few companies that are offering it, and then one multinational comes into the country with the same product, now their own brand, and they enter the country through a market access program where they say, for example, this product costs 40,000 shillings per vial, but we are doing a program and we want to offer it at 15,000 shillings per vial. And then they collaborate with government. So when that happens, technically they kick out all competitors from public hospitals, because now that is what, you know, cancer and the public facilities will prefer to use, and that way now the competitors literally have got no space in the public hospitals. Would that constitute unfair competition, or what would be the justification to allow that? In as much as they may say they're doing it for the patient, they're offering it at a fair cost to the patient, but looking at it from business point of view, it is my considered opinion that it could be unfair to other competitors in the market.
Well, what I would say is that it would depend on the circumstances or the situation rather, because if that has come in, what are the approvals or the regulatory sort of sanctions did they receive so that they can come into the market? Now, I would want to see the specifics of what you're saying, because generally looking at the outset of how you have explained, that would sound like unfair competition. But you'd want to look at the specifics to understand what is the program behind that? What were the considerations? Were the stakeholders involved in that whole process? And the stakeholders, I'm talking about the current suppliers of that particular drug in the market. So that's what I would say. But at the hindsight, it is something that the authority would look at. What we try to encourage is that even when you look at original drugs or generic drugs, obviously there's a price difference. And sometimes you'd want access of a certain important drug to consumers. The question is, in order to create that access, and remember there's a whole process of how generics come into play, then how is that done? But I think another major problem is the parallel imports that has been talked about here by Newton, etc. So you'd find in parallel imports there are drugs coming in, and in fact that happens even across other sectors where products parallel imports are coming in, and that is something that we need to really look at and sort of tackle in order to ensure that those who have brought in drugs are able to, sell it without having to go through those instances where they'll be exposed to, I would say, unfair competition. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your role in safeguarding consumer rights. My question is, does your authority have pharmacists in the technical teams?
What we do is that we engage personnel who are trained pharmacists. But when we go out there, you can imagine if you look at the customer experience, because when a customer or a consumer is going to the pharmacy, they do not have to be a pharmacist. So sometimes when we do our investigations, we look at what's the consumer experience. So when I talk about covert investigations, we would go in front of the counter and purchase, the drugs that are really bought a lot, the ones for the blood pressures, the sugars, etc. And what we also found out is that when we go to purchase, then you'd find a pharmacist giving various options. And they are likely to give information which is not correct. So in that instance, sort of, we look at that customer experience, but purchase the drugs, look at the current regulations in place in the country, and use that to be able to come to an assessment. But as I have indicated, is that we do not do this by ourselves. We work a lot with the Kenya Bureau of Standards. The investigations that we have so far done on the pharmaceuticals, we have put together something where we are going to engage the Pharmacy and Poisons Board in regards to those investigations. But whenever we do our investigations in a certain sector, then we used trained specialists.
Just as a follow-up question.
Okay.
In those investigations, does it occur to you that some of these investigations into the pharmaceutical sector are so technical that may require the collaborative aspects of the professionals in that sector? You've indicated that going forward you will involve the support of MOU collaborative systems with the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. Are these guidelines in the public domain? Thank you.
It's not guidelines. Within our law, we are mandated to come up with collaborative networks with other government agencies. So that's what we use to collaborate. Not in future that we will collaborate. We collaborate in various investigations. Even in the last 2 years, we have done some work with the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, the Kenya Bureau of Standards, and other regulators in this space, in the competition and consumer protection space. Yeah. Thank you.